Still with Morning Lights, thanks for staying with us. Now, following the recent announcement by the Health Department that COVID-19 variants dominant in the UK and India have been detected in the country, there is now growing concern that South Africa could experience a substantial third wave of coronavirus infections. Now, it remains unlikely that a significant percentage of the population will be vaccinated before then, which means that the wearing of masks, social distancing, and also avoiding crowded spaces remain some of the only defense mechanisms for many South Africans. And speaking on SABC last night, a renowned epidemiologist, Professor Salim Abdool Karim, has also raised concern over the possibility of a new local variant emerging. And to discuss this further, we are joined for these latest developments by Professor Ramneek Ahluwalia, who is, of course, Higher Health CEO, and he's going to help us unpack some of what is going on. Professor, good morning. Thanks so much for speaking to us.
Good morning, Sakina, and good morning to all the viewers, and thank you for having me.
So, Professor, you have previously said that South Africa could draw some lessons from the Indian and UK variants of the virus. Have we drawn those lessons, and what have we learned?
Now, I think the Indian wave currently is a brutal reminder. In fact, we need to mourn the magnitude of loss of deaths and the kind of epidemic and crisis India has seen. And it's kind of a major reminder to all of us, So what the UK variants, the Indian variant, or the Indian crisis, or the UK crisis is trying to tell us is that the virus continues to mutate. So the virus is trying to survive. All virus is trying to do is moving from one human to the other and trying to survive so that it can start escaping the immunity and start living into our human bodies and be destructive. And that's how the virus wants to survive. So it's a competition moving around how the virus will survive towards we fighting, developing immunities to kill this virus. And I think what we have started seeing is that this virus mutates. This virus mutates to forms where it becomes highly transmissible. It starts escaping antibodies or natural immunity, and it moves, And what's happened in India is a reminder that it can happen to any part of the world, and the whole global world is as vulnerable as India is. And of course, the lessons learned from India, where their own changes in behavior, their fatigue, their political rallies, their religious gatherings, and people absolutely forgetting the basic norms of understanding how the virus moves from its aerosol spread to its kind of now the airborne nature of droplets moving from one individual to other in close vicinity to each other and not wearing masks or forgetting to sanitize is a clear reminder that any of us, though in South Africa or any part of the world, we are extremely
Professor, just seemingly have a freeze there on the feed to you, so hopefully we can see it move. Seemingly it's back. Thank you so much. You are back with us now. So I was going to ask about this virus now trying to adapt and fight for survival. We talk about double or even triple mutants. What does that mean to layfolk like myself?
So, Sakina, double mutant is a misnomer, and it's actually what we've seen is 13 variations or mutations in the same variant, and that's quite tricky. And most importantly, why it's called a double mutant is because of two mutations that are extremely concerning for us to see on a same variant. Now, let me unwind it by explaining. So one of this mutation is called an L452R, but it's very similar to the variant that was first detected in California and caused a massive American surge of the virus. And parallelly, on the same variant, we've also seen another mutation, which is E484Q, which is very similar to the first detected South African variant, which was B1351, or a P1, which was in Brazil. Now, what does that apply is that you have so many mutations being noticed in one variant, which is now detected in India, And then you have two concerning variations on spike proteins, which are kind of indicating. So in a layman, one mutation on the same variant makes it highly transmissible, which means it moves from one individual to the other far quicker. So for example, in a room of 20, where there were 8 people or 6 people in the first wave becoming infected, now the virus has transformed or changed its color in such a way that now 16 people out of 20 can become positive even when they are in the same room. On the other side, the other variation that we are seeing, which is similar to the variation that we saw to the virus detected in South Africa or in Brazil, is that it kind of has escape mutations. And what does escape mutation means? Let me example give you that in India, when the first wave came, when the first COVID virus hit India, it was estimated that about 271 million people got infected and raised what we call it as natural immunity that a human body develops after the virus enters into your body. Now, this is clearly showing that this new variation that we are seeing on this variant can escape these antibodies, which means they are escape mutations through the natural immunity that the humans have, which makes it much more complicated that people can get reinfected. People who had the first variant in the first wave of India are highly equally susceptible for them into this new mutant. So the new mutant, so all this virus is doing is changing to become highly transmissible, trying to escape natural immunity in humans, and trying to survive and live. And more it spreads from one individual to the other, more it finds a human body where it can sit and mutate and try to transform so that it can start defeating the kind of immunity we produce. And that's exactly what's happening with this double mutant. But there are many other mutations and many other variants all across the globe, even in India, including the UK detected variant, which have been causing a severe havoc. So it's multiple mutations and multiple variants that are causing this massive crisis in India at this moment.
And if you look at what's happening here at home, so now we have these reports of the variants from India and the UK now positively identified in South Africa. So looking at the so-called UK mutant, it's said to be 60% more transmissible and virulent. And the question then becomes around our vaccination program, slow as it may be, some would love to say it's even non-existent, but looking at the vaccines that we are currently procuring as South Africa, the question becomes, are these going to be effective against these mutations that you speak about, Professor?
I think it's a very important question and a very challenging question for scientists at this moment. Now, we are rolling out Johnson & Johnson vaccine at this moment. The mutations are happening all across the world. So there is an Indian mutant that we have not spoken about, detected in India, which is a double mutant. There's a UK variant, which is also kind of a huge concern and found in South Africa. Now, we've just come out of a second wave recently. The second wave has caused built a natural immunity in many South Africans. It's not about the people who got tested and we know they were positive and these are the only people who were infected with the virus and produced a natural immunity. There's highly possible and huge number of people, can be at 5 to 10 times more, which were actually not tested and which had very mild or asymptomatic symptoms and had the virus and still produced the natural immunity. So the variant from India, the variant from UK can be a possibility that our natural immunity is still capable enough to still fight these new mutations that are coming into South Africa from other parts of the world. Now, what vaccine does is, in general, vaccine produces a far stronger immune response in our bodies compared to the natural immunity that you develop after acquiring a virus. So vaccine immunity is always far superior than the natural immunity, which means vaccine should be in a position to assist a human body from fighting many of these multiple mutations or variants that are happening, unless there might be a variant that can slowly start developing, that can start escaping these vaccine immunity, not yet proven at this moment. So vaccines for now are extremely effective, will always be the most effective weapon. And if some message we can go forward from this interview will be is to ask South Africans when they are invited for vaccination to go and do vaccination, because the immunity the vaccine will produce is far bigger than the natural immunity and is deemed to be preventive against multiple variants. But the possibility that we have to watch now is, should there be mutations developing in South Africa alone or in other parts of the world with variants that start developing these severe escape mutations that can still escape these vaccine-produced immunity? And that will be a matter of concern. So far, not proven, and for this reason, vaccine remains the biggest weapon we have. And I think the drive of increasing vaccination and having South Africans vaccinated becomes a very imminent and a prominent role that our country needs to move into.
And to that point, Professor, what's been happening is, of course, we have been very slow in our vaccination rollout plan. But what South Africans in general, or at least anecdotally, are concerned about is the fact that our borders remain open and that all of these mutants almost, invariably will find us. They probably would, even if the borders were closed. But I think people would feel more comfortable if they knew that, we're trying to contain the situation. And to this end, I'm just curious about the sort of conversations that's happening between scientists and government leaders, because we always told that government is led by the science around this matter. But what would be the scientific advice to government at a time like this? Would you have advised government to close the borders like other countries have done, or does it not matter?
So there are two sides of the coin at this moment, and let me explain to you why. Number one is mutations are happening all over the world, including in South Africa. So when the virus moves from one body to the other, and it sometimes finds a body that it appreciates to sit quietly and mutate, a variant is being developed. Most of these variants are insignificant. But some of these variants, like the double mutant, the variant in UK, the variant we detected in South Africa, these are very strong variants of concern because they show high transmissibility or escape mutations, which are problematic. Now, having said that, when we talk about borders, now, if you say, let's close the border with India and stop every flights from India coming in, or any person coming via any other country from India and be stopped, the challenge is that this variant of the double mutant that we spoke about is already in 20 other countries, including now South Africa. Which means that the virus will not just come from India, it can come from every part of the world. And what do we do when the economy is at a brink of trade and engagement with the world, and cross-migration does happen? There are families and people who have relatives and relationships and challenges around the multi-magnitude of cross-migration that the world has moved into. So the advice is that anyone coming from any part of the world, now we have to watch the Indians coming to South Africa, predominantly because the chances of them carrying the virus is very high due to the positivity rate in India at this moment. But anybody coming to South Africa needs to be put into a 14 days quarantine. That's the right way to do. Have to follow the necessary testing and screening program, where they test before taking a flight and test 3 to 4 days after reaching South Africa in the quarantine, and being watchful in the quarantine with a 2-test procedure, which is 2-test program. And that's the right way to approach, because you're not stopping cross-migration, but you are being extremely careful for any individual coming from across the border, irrespective is coming from Southern Africa or Europe or India or any part of the world, because they can bring any mutant or a variant to South Africa, as much as the variants are also being developed in South Africa alone. So I think any country, the scientists, from my perspective, the view will be is a 14 days quarantine, rigorous testing program and screening program for any traveler that reaches our shore and needs to be followed so that we can detect this virus and close the spread of the virus, because all we're doing is we're letting the virus die in that human body, then allowing this virus from moving from that human body to others and spreading multitudinally. That's exactly what we see and experience.
Well, just a final question, Professor. How do we prepare for what seems to be an almost inevitable third wave now? Is there anything that we can do, should do differently at this stage?
I think you're right. Third wave is inevitable. There's no doubt about it. The question is how deep it will be. We've just come out of a second wave. We have some natural immunity against many of these variants. And there's a high possibility our third wave might not be as strong as we've seen in India or other parts of the world. But on the other side, as I said, there might be many mutants and many variants that are being developed globally and even in South Africa that will try to escape these immunities and cause a havoc of our third wave. So we need to learn the lessons what we've seen from India at this moment. No gatherings. We need to be extremely careful. At this moment, our infections are all-time low. This is all-time low because our humans in South Africa have that natural immunity that is letting this virus suppressed at this moment. But the virus is being very clever and trying to find a body where it's trying to mutate so that it can defeat our immunity. So the virus is preparing to defeat us. But we need to be careful that if we can wear the masks, we can maintain the distance, we do not give this virus any ammunition to travel from one body to the other. Do not give this virus an opportunity to mutate. Do not give this virus another human body to go and destroy. We have done a massive behavioral part towards killing this virus, because this virus will not mutate, will not move, and will not be transmissible if it does not get a chance to move from one human to the other. And I think if we can follow these basic, and I know people are fatigued, this is going on, and history will tell you with all the other pandemics, whether it's Spanish flu or a bubonic plague or others that have rocked the world in the past and human life, waves as it moves become more lethal and dangerous, predominantly because it becomes highly transmissible and humans have fatigue towards these behavioral norms that are critical in a virus spread. So the only thing is learn from India, what mistake India did. I think we as South Africans or any part of the other world needs to learn and be extremely careful and vigilant as this virus is still preparing to try to defeat us.
Well, Professor, that is sobering, and we'll leave it on that note. Thank you so much for speaking to us, a medical expert and Higher Health CEO, Professor Ramneek Ahluwalia, and Lian Somber.
Yeah,